Hi guys, KevLar here. So today we're doing a PC build for a customer. As you can see there, we've got an RTX 3070, we've got a Ryzen 5 5600X, and then some reasonably basic components for the rest of the build. The customer was really looking for a good performance PC at a reasonable budget, so a decent GPU and a decent CPU, and we kept the cost down by going more lower end on the other parts that won't really affect their FPS in gaming. I'll talk you through the components as we go through the build. Let's get into it. Right, so starting off, we've got a B450 motherboard, fairly basic, B450M DS3H from Gigabyte. Does everything you need really, no fancy bells and whistles about it. Right, let's get it unboxed. Okay, we'll have our SATA cables, motherboard itself, and we should have an IO shield. Okay, so first of all, let's get the motherboard out its packaging. Place the anti-static on the box. Pop the motherboard on top. That's the best way to start building your PC. Keep it nice and safe. So the motherboard has got 4 RAM slots if we need it. It's got the M.2 slot. So yeah, it's got everything we really need. First of all, let's get the CPU in. So as I already said, we've got a Ryzen 5 5600X. Let's get this unboxed. Okay, again, to keep the price down on this build, we're going to be using the standard stock cooler, which the AMD one is pretty decent. It's obviously good enough for the CPU, so the customer can upgrade in the future if they wish. Here's the CPU itself. Right, so we'll carefully get that out. Don't want to drop it, don't want to bend any pins. Okay, so we're going to open the socket on the motherboard, look for the triangle on the CPU, line it up with the mark on the motherboard, and drop it into place. Make sure it's definitely dropped into place properly before we close the lever. Right, the CPU in. Next we want to install the cooler. Now this cooler does not need the brackets that are already on the motherboard, so remove those. Right, we'll get the cooler out of the box. Now we're going to get it out carefully because this should have pre-applied thermal paste, which it does, but got a few marks on it there. Don't know if that's dust. So what I'm going to do is, and I always prefer to do this anyway, I'm going to take the pre-applied thermal paste off and use some more decent thermal paste that I've got and usually use. I'd always advise to do that anyway. The aftermarket thermal paste that you buy is usually better than the pre-applied thermal paste, in my opinion anyway. Just doing it off camera at the moment, but just to show you I use these. So thermal paste remover and some purifier. So remove it first, purify the surface, then it's all good for some fresh thermal paste. Right, there we go, all removed, cleaned and purified, and I've got some of my Corsair TM30 thermal paste to put on instead. Okay, so I like the blob method, so I'll just put a blob in the middle of the CPU. Line the cooler up. Let's have the AMD on the left hand side. Line the screws up with the back plate on the motherboard, then we'll screw it in. Okay, so a couple of turns on alternate sides, so that we're putting even pressure on the CPU as we screw it in. Okay, then as we get to the end of the screwing, don't force it, the screws will just stop when you've hit the limit, and we don't need to turn it tight. Okay, so that's all screwed on. So now we want to plug in our CPU fan into the fan header on the motherboard, which is often at the top side here. And we can see here we've got the CPU fan labelling. Nice and easy, plug that in. Okay, now to install our RAM. So RAM, we've gone for some Crucial Ballistix gaming memory, 16 gigabytes, so 2 sticks of 8, DDR4, 3200 megahertz. Perfectly good for gaming. Right, let's turn this around a bit so you can see from that angle. Right, so as I said, we've got 4 slots on this motherboard. Obviously if it's only a 2-slot motherboard, then it's easy to know which ones to put them in. Now when using 2 sticks of RAM, it's dual channel, and a lot of motherboards will colour code the slots to help you out. So you can see here we've got 2 grey slots and 2 black slots. So you want to put the RAM in the matching colours. Which ones do you use? Now I've always said to use the furthest one away from the CPU and the one that's 2 in from that. And actually this motherboard is quite handy because they've even labelled it for us. If you see here, it's numbered them 1, 3, 2 and 4. Okay, so 1 and 2. So that tells us use that one and that one, 1 and 2. So we use those 2 first, so excellent. That proves the theory. Okay, so we're going to open up those 2 slots. Check what way it needs to go based on where the little slit is in the RAM and where the little slit is in the actual slot. So let's slot that one in. Line it up, push it down until it clicks. Nice firm push. Same with this one. Line it up, click it in. There you go, RAM is in. Right, now we can tuck the cable round a little bit. Tidy that up. Right, next we want to install our M.2. So here we've got an M.2 NVMe solid state drive, 250 gigabytes. So that's the crucial P2. So if you're not sure, NVMe is faster than the standard SATA M.2. So we're going to have a nice fast boot drive here. Right, okay, here's our M.2 drive. We just need to unscrew the little screw here. Click that into place over this side. Click it in. Get a little screw and screw it back on. Perfect. That's everything we can do on the motherboard. So now we'll get the case and get the motherboard in it. Right, so here's our case with the Kolink, I always struggle to say that, the Kolink Observatory case. The one with the glass temper panel at the front. They do one with a mesh, but we've gone for the glass one. That's one the customer picked. So we just need to double check first, are the pre-installed motherboard standoffs in the right place, which looking at it the answer is no. For our motherboard I need to move this one down one. Alright, so we'll just unscrew that, screw it in the lower one, and annoyingly I've had this in quite a few cases actually, we should have another hole around here somewhere for this motherboard, because it's one of the wider ones. Like I say, it's got the 4 slots of RAM. You'll see we've got a hole there and a hole there, and this case does not have a standoff slot for that hole. It's fine, it will go in, but it just means when I'm plugging the motherboard cable in, I'm going to have to be a bit more careful that I'm not bending, because I've got nothing behind that stopping it from bending. Excuse the mess in the background. First of all, we need to insert the I/O shield. Get that fan cable out the way. Clip that into place. There we go, it's clipped in nicely. Okay, so now we're going to place our motherboard on top of those standoffs. There we go. Right, motherboard's in place. Little concern, there's not going to be enough room to fit our CPU cable through there. So before I screw it in, I'm just going to get our power supply out and just check it's going to fit. If it doesn't, we'll just have to feed the CPU cable through first before we screw the motherboard down. Okay, I'm being lazy and not moving the camera. This is the power supply that we've got. So it's an Aerocool Cylon 700 watt. It's an 80 plus rated, white rated that is. Again, fairly budget power supply, but they are really decent. 700 watts is going to be a good amount for the RTX 3070 that we've got and the rest of the PC that needs the power. I like the design of this power supply. It's got nice quiet cooling. It's got really nice quality flat cables. It's a really good power supply for the price, and I've built probably over 30 PCs with these and never had any problem at all. Right, here's our CPU cable. Let's just see if it's going to fit through there. Yeah, it's going to be fine. So let's get the motherboard screwed into place now. Okay, so the motherboard screws usually come with a case, and as usual they are these little ones with the little ridge you can see around the edge. See that glistening in the light there. Get that screwed in. Okay, motherboard is all screwed in. Next, let's do the case front panel cables. Okay, so the USB 3 on this motherboard's here, so we'll feed that one up here and plug that in there. The HD audio is usually over here, so we'll push that one through next. Right, so HD audio up there. There you go, that's in place. USB in one of the USB slots. Nice. Then we got these horrible fiddly power switch, HD, LED, etc, etc, which will be over here. So I'm not going to show you this in close detail because I've done plenty of other videos where I've shown exactly where each one of these go. So you can go and check those out if you really want to learn. Right, there you go. They're all in. We are going to need a SATA cable because we're having a hard drive. So yeah, sorry, so I'm using a hard drive for storage and the NVMe for boot. Okay, that's all in there. Next, let's do the power supply. Right, so we'll slot that in there, fan facing down so it can draw in cool air from outside of the case rather than sucking in the hot air from inside the case. Screw that into place. There we go, power supply's in. Start off with that CPU cable, feed that up through here. Okay, and I'll plug that in around the front. I need to lie down flat so I can see properly. There you go, that's plugged in that top corner there. Next, let's feed through the motherboard cable, put that underneath all of these, feed through this top one here, okay, and then clip that into place. Trying to do it a bit more gentle so I don't bend the motherboard too much, but it does need to make sure that is in. Usually a bit of force is fine. Yeah, I can feel that that is in place. Okay, I'm going to feed through the GPU cables, ready for later. There we go. Right, so we're getting there. We've just got left to do the fan hub and the hard drive. Go with the hard drive first, let's get that in place. So I'm going to take the hard drive bay out so we can screw it in place nicely. We've got some screws under here to take this out. There we go, hard drive bay. Slot our hard drive in. There we go, and I can screw that into place in there. There we go, that's all screwed into place. We'll slot that back in and screw it back on. There we go. Okay, we'll just plug the SATA cable into the hard drive. SATA, whatever you want to call it. And we'll need some SATA power, which we've got here. Right, so let's take a look at this fan hub that came with it. So it's going to fit 10 fans. It's got LED ports as well, which is nice. And it needs SATA power, and the RGB connection for the motherboard, which this motherboard doesn't have a RGB connection, so it will be controlled via the remote control rather than motherboard software. Right, question is, if I stick that on here, is the back of the case going to go on? I'm going to have to test that quickly. Okay, the answer is yes. Good, because if it didn't, that would have been a ridiculous design. Right, so we're going to stick that there. Right, let's give it its SATA power, which is good. It's got a long cable with it, so we can actually tuck that down here rather than the SATA cable going up to it. So that's nice. Okay, so we've done that. Now we need to plug our fans into there, so let's have it in order. So we'll say number 1 is the bottom fan, so we're going to go up the case and round to the back. So this back one is going to be fan number 4, top one number 3, middle one number 2, and the bottom one will be number 1. Okay, so there we are, PC is mostly built. All we've got left to do is plug in the graphics card, cable manage, and switch it on and test it out. But I'm going to come back tomorrow, so I might be dressed differently when you see me in the next scene, because it's getting quite late now. I started this a bit late in the evening, so we'll come back to it. Right, okay, time to get the graphics card installed. So we've got the Inno3D Twin X2 RTX 3070. So again, sticking within the budget, this is actually the cheapest RTX 3070 graphics card we can find, brand new in the UK. Obviously, other than if you manage to get hold of a Founders Edition from one of the Founders Edition drops, but they're really hard to get hold of. This one was £570, and here it is. I actually really like it, it feels really nice. I'm not sure if that's metal, it feels like metal, it feels quite heavy and good quality, so yeah, decent card for the price. Looks nice, got a nice back plate on it, it's got the 4 display connections, so 3 display ports, 1 HDMI. Cool, let's get it in. Right, so first we'll just line it up and just see which PCIe slots we need to remove, so we'll leave the top one in and move the next 2 down. 2 of them are screwed in and the rest are fixed, so we need to physically remove this one and we can unscrew that one. There we go. Line it up with the top PCIe lane, make sure it's open actually first. The clip there that locks it in place once it's in. Slot it in. There you go, you can see that's locked, and obviously you see we need to screw that into place. Okay, it's screwed in, let's put the PCIe lock back in place. There we go, it's all in place. There we go, nice and solid now. So now we can plug it in. Bit annoying actually that the GeForce RTX logo is below the power slots. Right, so that is the PC built. So really all we've got to do now, turn it on, see if it works, get Windows installed. If it all works, then we can sort out the cable management. Alright, so here we go. It's all set up on my test area. Let's turn it on at the back. Press the power button and fingers crossed. Okay, there is some lighting on the GPU. I thought there was no lighting on there, so that's a good sign. So you turn the monitor on. So we've got lights, we've got fans going. Let's see if we get display. Looking good. There we go, got motherboard screen. Have I already got Windows installed on this? I can't remember. Okay, yes I do. Right, okay, good. The PC is all running. All I need to do now is do some benchmarking, get the drivers installed for the GPU. We'll do a few tests and get it working. And obviously then we'll do the cable management. Right, so here we go. I've gone into the motherboard settings and put XMP on to make sure that the RAM's at its full speed. Just run the Heaven benchmark test and we're getting a score of 4,279. Very nice. That's on extreme high settings. So very good. I've had the open hardware monitor in the background as well so I can check the temperatures. I think we're all good to go. I just need to do the cable management. I'll show you a before and after. I won't show you me doing that because that's just boring, and then we're all good to go. Right, so there we go, PC's all built. One last thing to show I guess is the lighting effect. So we've got this little controller here which comes to the fan hub, those little buttons to change the colours. We can put it on auto which gives us the rainbow effect. We can change the brightness of the lights up and down. We can change the speed of the fans. And there is a little motherboard button there, so if you had connected it to the motherboard using the ARGB connection and using the motherboard software, obviously you can move it over to that. So yeah, decent little gaming PC there. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Please do give us a like and subscribe if not already done so, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.